he's pretty much in every sport I coach, so I understand what he goes through. So I know, like, all right, I can talk to him in different ways where I couldn't talk to a student I really don't know or understand, to a point where he's been with me for 4 years as a wrestler, as cross country. So I can talk to him and criticize his paper the way I want to criticize his paper, telling him what he's doing right, what he's doing wrong. We can meet during practice, we can meet outside of school. So that's when you write your letter to your mentors, you should have that good rapport and be able to communicate with your mentees, because sometimes you choose someone that it's not going to work out, and that whole year you're stressing and wondering, what, man, I should have chose this teacher over this teacher. Really know the teacher you're going to pick and understand how they grade, because sometimes you'll be in a lot of trouble and stressing the whole senior year, where when I was working with Depak, I don't think he was stressing until this last week, okay, during the presentation process, where I was being critical on how he was doing his presentation. But I think you're going to enjoy this, and here's Depak Singh.
All right, good afternoon everyone. It's the last presentation. Good thing it's going to be an interesting one. So first off, I'd like to give thanks to some people. So starting with Mr. Tang, who's been my coach for 4 years, he's been my mentor this year, and he's been a positive person in my entire life as a high school student. I'd also like to thank my community evaluator, Mrs. Witter. If that name sounds familiar, she's Robin's mom. So I'd like to give you a lot of thanks for taking time out of your schedule to come here today and watch me give my presentation. I'd like to thank my family in the back for supporting me throughout the entire year. And then I'd also like to shout out everybody, all my friends that are here, especially like the seniors who just decided to pack up the room. So now that that's over, it's time to begin. As you can obviously see by my first slide here, I'm going to be talking to you about pornography. So, who thinks that it's really easy to access pornography in this country? Raise your hands. If you aren't raising your hands, you're acting silly. But okay. With that, I'm going to do something. I'm going to alt-tab out of here. I'm going to type something into Google. And I'm going to press enter. Okay. Someone read the first thing that shows up. Somebody raise your hand.
Free porn.
So you can see the top 3 searches are obviously going to be porn sites. And that shows how lenient the United States is on its regulations of pornography. If it had been more regulated, we'd probably not be seeing things like this. Google would probably hide it. But this leads me to my essential question. Should there be stricter regulation on pornography in the United States? So, before I actually begin, I'm going to go through and give you some context to tell you the history, some basic statistics, and also tell you about the First Amendment and the Miller test. Then I'm going to go on and give you my answer and my top 3 reasons, which is the third part there. Then I'm going to address some counterclaims, so what people say against porn, and then I'm going to give you my conclusion and wrap it all up, and then we can all go home and have fun. So, but going back real quick, I need to clarify something. When I mean stricter regulation, I mean harder to access, harder to find. And when I mean pornography, I'm talking strictly legal pornography, so between 2 or more consenting people over the age of 18. Nothing involving, no illicit pornography, such as child pornography. Well, so that won't be addressed at all during this entire presentation. So let's go on, and I'll tell you about some history of the topic. So porn has been around for thousands of years. The first recorded instance of it actually being found in ancient Egypt with this sheet of paper, papyrus actually, called the Turin Erotic Papyrus. Don't Google this when you get home. But this is also known as the first gentleman's magazine ever recorded. But when I talk about ancient porn, most people don't assume immediately the Egyptians. they more assume the ancient Greeks and the Romans. After all, they did use it extensively. Oh, ooh, no. They did use it extensively on pottery and coins. So, now that you have that in your head, remember that pornography isn't just something recent that came through in the 50s or the 60s. It's been around for thousands of years. So now I'm going to give you statistics. So all the statistics that I'm going to give you come from the biggest porn website on the internet, and that's Pornhub.com. They have a team of statisticians that actually do research on like porn usage and consumption. So I'm going to tell you right now, from what I've gathered from them, there are 40,000 people that watch pornography every second. How many people live in Pacifica? 38,686 people. There are more people that watch porn every second than there are people living in this town now. Not only that, when we take a look at the United States, we're the top country that has the most page views per capita. Now when I mean per capita, I mean per person, right? So under your name, you have 123 page views of porn. So I see you looking at me, Justin. You have 123 pages of porn. Right? But that's not just Justin. That's everybody here. Every individual person. But this, since this also comes from Pornhub, this is based on their own data of their own website. There are a billion websites on the internet, right, in total, and 12% of those websites are pornographic. And if you put that into numbers, you have 120 million web pages just comprised of pornographic material. And that's just the website itself. Now if you include the web pages under each of those domain names, you get more than 120 million. You might even go into the billions. So that just shows you the reach of porn throughout the internet. Now going on to this next part here, so this is the amount of internet traffic Pornhub.com gets to its website, and this is based off all of last year. So the United States is on the top out of all the countries, and that has almost 3 times as much as the next country, which is the United Kingdom. So with those statistics, I'll move on and tell you about this important case called the Miller test. Or, well, not the Miller test, that's what came after, but Miller v. California, which was decided in 1973. So what happened in this case is that Miller distributed pornographic flyers throughout his community. That's to advertise his porn business. He was sued over it, and he took it to the Supreme Court. He told the court, hey, I have my First Amendment rights. I should not be here. And in your First Amendment, one of the 6 clauses of the First Amendment is the right to freedom of speech. So he says, why am I here? First Amendment rights, not even a problem. So what happened was, in a 5-4 decision, the court decided against Miller, saying that the flyers were too graphic in nature for the community. So what this led to was the creation of the Miller test. So the Miller test is also known as a 3-prong obscenity test. And obviously, it has 3 prongs to it. So if all 3 prongs are satisfied, then it becomes known as obscene and therefore bannable. So the first prong is that an average person with community standards must be sexually aroused by the work. The second prong is that sex must be shown explicitly or described offensively. The third prong is that the work is not literary, artistic, political, or scientific. Now, the thing about the Miller test is that when we go back to an average person with community standards, you get different ideas of standards. You have a person that lives here in the Bay Area that doesn't think porn is all that bad, but then you go into someone who lives in Utah who thinks porn is horrible. So you have a different community idea of what it means. And then also, if you look at these 4 here, a community can decide what each thing can be. If you take the book 50 Shades of Grey, it's not classified as obscene because it's a book, right? And a lot of people read it. But then also a lot of porn, that's why a lot of porn isn't banned, gets marked as artistic. So, with all that context in your head, you're about to hear my answer, and my answer is no. there should not be any further regulation on pornography in the United States. And with all that context I've given you, this sounds pretty shocking, but let me give you my top 3 reasons as to why I think this. So, we'll go on with my first reason, and that is that porn is beneficial to teens and adults, right? So, so as teenagers, we're all going through a very hormonal period in our lives. Sex is a primal instinct, and it's just something that we all have to deal with. But a lot of people don't like to talk about sex, not only with their friends, but mainly with their families. In a Planned Parenthood survey taken in 2012, they proved just that. So, actually, let's do this now. Who here is uncomfortable with talking about sex to their families? Okay, you all proved it for me too. Over 50% of United States teens are uncomfortable talking about sex with their families. So, well, that's where pornography comes in. It's not, you're not telling, well, so thanks to the internet being easy to access, and that practically everybody has it, anybody can just hop online, search what they want, and they don't have to tell anybody. Not only is this safe, it's also healthy, but it's also not embarrassing in any way because you're not telling anyone, and you don't have any shame because nobody is judging you on it. Because obviously, it's shameful and embarrassing if you talk to your parents that you're into BDSM, right? So let me go back and tell you about how healthy it is. You aren't going out and practicing sexual acts which can lead to an STI or pregnancy. You're actually at home on your computer or phone or whatever device in your room or wherever, and you're actually just on your searching it up. It's an easy way, and it's safe for everyone and healthy. So now that I've pointed out those awesome benefits to you, I'm going to go on and tell you, you're going to hear around that pornography is bad. You're going to hear it around always. But I'm here to tell you that when people say that porn is bad, they're actually over-exaggerating and overreacting. So, first thing you may hear around is that increased porn consumption actually increases for attacks of violence against women. But really, there have been no true studies done about this, mainly because there has been no relationship between the two variables. So if you ever look it up, you're getting biased information, which, as my interviewee, Dr. Prosterman, who I'll explain more about later, told me that it's fact versus opinion, with which opinion winning over the facts. And why do facts win over opinions? Well, Dr. Prosterman, who is a sexologist, which is a doctor who studies human sexual relationships, what he told me is that society is very sex negative. And when I mean sex negative, he means that we view topics such as sex as taboo, and that we should not bring it up out of our private lives. But, so that's what really leads to it. He's also told me that he hears a lot about a thing called porn addiction. You've probably heard about it too. He's actually disproved that porn addiction is even a thing. What he actually says is that porn addiction is actually a compulsion. And a compulsion is where you have the willpower to stop, but you choose not to stop. And a good example of this is being like me, nail biting, or maybe some other people who compulsively eat. So yeah, biased sources just call compulsiveness addiction, mainly because of the fact that if you hear addiction, which has negative connotation, you know that, oh, that is bad, but really, they're just swaying your opinion. And if you're not believing me right now about what I'm saying, what Prosterman is saying, he's also told me that he's not only is he a sexologist, but he's also a couples therapist and a family therapist. So when a troubled couple walks through his doors, which usually happens a couple times a week, he gives them pornography to view when they leave. And what happens when the couple reports back? There are no problems anymore. The couple, there's no problems between the two people anymore because the porn has actually fixed the relationship. So, but let's go out on a tangent here, right? I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with the gentleman's magazine, Playboy. So, one of the main arguments used against pornography is that it's harmful to us as teenagers. But that's why I'm using this example here. When Playboy came out in the 50s, there was a lot of people that were procuring these magazines. But what did those people who had it do? When they hid it, but they hid it poorly. So you had teens and kids actually finding these magazines around a lot. But what happened to those kids and teens that grew up looking at this kind of stuff, right? They're fine. They're fine today. So if we draw a parallel between internet porn and Playboy, right? Say that we're the teens that found the Playboy magazines, except that we replaced the Playboy magazine with internet porn. We should grow up fine too. We should not be harmed by using pornography when people of the past have also used pornography and grew up fine. So we're going to move on to my third reason, and this is how pornography affects us technologically and economically, and this is actually positively affects us. So this is probably my favorite reason. So what if I told you that most of the things that you use, that you depend on daily, were actually influenced by pornography? Pretty sure most of you would be surprised. But porn uses these platforms, future platforms, to push their industry farther, to expand. So I'll actually use an example. Who here knows what a Betamax is? Not a Baymax, a Betamax. Sony's Betamax. No. Who here knows what a VHS tape is? Okay, so let me tell you more about it. So JVC owns the VHS tape. Sony owned the Betamax, the Betamax. What happened was that these two companies went at a war against each other in the late 70s, early 80s, about who would be on top. Sony did not let pornographers use their tape to put porn onto, but JVC did. So what did this lead to? Well, porn attracts people. If there's porn on something futuristic, people will go to it. So what happened was, nobody started buying the Betamax. Sony's Betamax died out, and the VHS tape won. So that's why most of us know what a VHS tape is and not what a Betamax is. But not only that, I know we're all heavy internet users. We all rely on the internet every single day. Actually, without the internet, I wouldn't have made this PowerPoint. Ooh. So, what if I told you that without pornography, we wouldn't have the internet today? What happened was when the computer first started rolling out and internet first started rolling out, was that the porn companies saw the use of the internet as a better way to distribute their videos, not only faster and easier, but people found they would be more private. So what they started doing was pushing broadband, like companies, internet service providers, faster broadband connections, and make the internet more accessible. So what this led to was more people buying computers because it's easier to purchase a computer and be able to watch pornography in your own home than having to make an embarrassing trip to the video store. Not only that, if you use services like eBay, Amazon, or PayPal, you can actually thank porn for them as well. So when porn first started going out onto computers, they invented a system where you pay by your credit card or your debit card. And then eventually that system would be what these companies would use to have their own, what they based it upon. So, thank porn for getting your stuff really fast on Amazon. But let's stop looking at the past, let's move on to the future, because the industry can only go one way, and that's forward. So, this is the this is the Oculus Rift. This fantastic piece of machinery, I'm pretty sure a lot of you know what it is. It brings us as humans into virtual reality. Finally, I don't know how long it's been. But porn companies have already started seeing the use of this device. And that is, putting porn onto this would make more people purchase porn, and not only would it make it better for the user, it would just benefit everybody. So once this becomes available to consumers, or other things like it, there will be lines outside the doors, not only just because they're made of gamers, but And also people who just want to watch porn on virtual reality dolls. But let's also tackle something else. So I've already mentioned to you many times about Pornhub.com. So recently they've announced a piece of technology that tackles our energy problem on a minuscule scale. So this is known as their very own wank ban. So exactly what it says here. A kinetic charger inside of the wank band stores generated electricity. So what happens? So you wear the wank band on your wrist, and up and down motions.
Oh my God.
Up and down motions cause electricity to be generated within the band. Then you can use that band to charge your phone, your camera, any portable electronic device. Not only that, think about when this starts coming out on a larger scale. If we start using it for more than just masturbating at home, then it can actually be pretty useful to the world. So that's where I say for technology is that if you regulate porn further, you're not going to get investments like the wank band. You're not going to get people investing in things like the Oculus Rift. It's going to be way harder to invest in those things. But let's also talk economics real quick. So pornography, just in the United States, makes over $2 billion annually. And that's just internet porn. Now, if I coined the term general porn, which also includes DVDs, magazines, pictures, etc., so that makes over $12 billion annually in the United States alone. Now, if you take general porn and take it worldwide, all that generates about $100 billion in revenue. Now, we'll go on, and I'm actually going to present the counterclaim, and what do people say against pornography. So, well, what people say is that porn creates criminals. And they say that not only just does it affect us negatively, but yes, it creates criminals. So, Ted Bundy, an American serial killer, kidnapper, and rapist, before being executed, was interviewed. What he said to the interview was, and I quote, "Porn affected my criminal compulsions." So the fact that a merciless serial killer was affected by pornography just comes to show how porn creates criminals. Not only that, Michael Leahy, a former porn addict and an author, actually said that he lived a storybook life. So he had a house, a wife, 2 kids, and a good job. Once he started indulging in pornography, he started having extramarital affairs. He then left his wife and his 2 kids. And that may not be a crime related to law, but that's obviously a social crime. Because if you hear about someone who just leaves their wife and kids just because they started watching pornography, you look down upon them too. And then third, there's something that we're all affected by, and that's if you look at your emails, you're going to see a nice little folder on the left that says spam. Pornography, how do spammers get our information? So these porn companies actually give money to people who work at websites that have your user data. And they say, here's this lump of money, give me the user data. And people actually agree to it. So they take the money, and then they give out all that user data. So that's what the other side says. And I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't agree with the other side. So first of all, Sergeant O'Brien and Castillo, so 2 obviously sergeants in the San Francisco Police Department, have actually apprehended many criminals convicted of sex crime. And that relates all the way from harassment down to human trafficking. So what they've told me is that none of the apprehended criminals ever confessed to having been influenced by porn, nor did they seem like they were influenced by pornography at all. And when I asked Officer Castillo, who worked in the Special Victims Unit in the Mission District, he told me, I don't think criminals could ever admit to that anyway. It's just, not only is it hard to tell, but because there's just something there, it's obvious that it's not happening. And when I'm saying spam, it's not, what happens when spam, like why these people sell out your information, it's not high-ups that sell your information out. It's not the owners of the websites that sell out your information. It's those people who work the menial jobs that are working for the company that don't get enough to make it by, or barely get enough to make it by, actually. So, thank your tech support from Comcast for selling out your information because he doesn't get paid much. But that's because if he's trying to make it by, trying to help his family survive, obviously if he gets offered a lump sum of money in order and just to give out user data of people he doesn't even know nor care about, of course he's gonna take it. Everybody needs to get by somehow. So I've given you my counterclaim. We're coming near the end now. We're coming near the end. But I want to reiterate some points for you. So, pornography should not be further regulated because, 1, it's good for us as people. 2, it's actually protected under our rights as Americans because no pornography actually violates any of the prongs of the Miller test. 3, technology and economics are greatly affected by pornography. And then 4, because so many people try to think pornography is bad and try to make you think pornography is bad, and it's really just over-exaggerated because everybody grows up fine. So, what I'm saying is that we have to stop focusing on pornography being so bad. The only way that we can start focusing on things that truly matter is to start taking our focus away from something like pornography and putting it to something that matters. And what I'm trying to say there is that, what Dr. Prosterman said, being a sex-negative society, that's not going to work out for us if we continue to think of it, because we're starting to go farther in the years, and we're starting to be more accepting of people. We're starting to accept more things. So let's stop being a sex-negative society. Let's just let humans do what they do, and in private, what they want to do in private, and let's just stop focusing on that. So in full conclusion, porn is good, and that's the end. Oh, are there any questions? If you don't ask questions, I'm going to get a revisit. And I'll be very upset. Answer.
So, what sort of videos do you have to watch in order to get a more deeper understanding of the topic?
Actually, don't need to watch any videos. During my entire research, I never watched a single video. You just research and research and research all these people that know what they're talking about. There are a lot of journals out there that I've found that are talking about this very subject, even though they may be a little dated, and some are maybe more a little recent, and some you have to pay for to get to. But there are journals and things like this.
Nice. Do you watch porn?
That's a personal question.
How did your parents feel about this topic?
I actually didn't tell them anything about this topic. I just told them, oh, I'm doing my presentation on pornography, and that's it. That's actually it.
Photography? No,
photography.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
You showed Playboy from the 50s. How do you think porn has changed over the last 60 years?
Well, I've actually also researched that as well. From what I found is that during the 50s was obviously way before the computer. And so people were viewing it through magazines. But as soon as technology starts to advance, which is like the investment in the computer, the VHS tape, things like that, pornography will push itself onto those newer investments. So pornography actually has changed from things such as you've seen as the paper, papyrus and paintings and things, all the way moving from pictures and going to magazines. Then as the VHS, it just pushes itself onto newer and newer technology, and people will purchase when it's on. Does that kind of answer your question?
What are the regulations of porn sites? Are they different on each site?
A lot of sites, yes, they're different on a lot of sites. Most sites actually do have age restrictions, which you actually have to enter in your age. but really that's super simple when it's just a click of a button or faking your own age. But then like actual regulation is that like such as the Miller test. That's one of the actual regulations. Another regulation being you have to be over the age of 18 to purchase pornography or view pornography. Great.
We're trying to buy the watch.
The watch is not yet available. It's actually in beta, and there's actually a lot of people. There's a lot of interest within this device.
So you mentioned that porn helped couples who fight. So how did it help them?
Dr. Crosswing couldn't actually be specific with it because of confidentiality, but it's just how, like, hey, you should go and try this, and then there you go. He didn't tell me what's in between because he's not allowed to tell me what's in between.
Wait, I'm confused about the connection. Okay, so after the wave band, how is it take like energy to charge your phone?
There's a little weight inside of the band
Uh-huh.
that after it's moved, it starts like kinetic energy physics. It harnesses that energy that converts it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It's true.
So like you mentioned about pornography, like the medium it's used or it's viewed with changed over like time, right? So you see like paper, papyrus, and now it's on computers. But what about like over time? Do you think tastes have changed and like what people are into? But also, do you think it could get to a point where people are so accepting of pornography that like the human population just like ruins everything?
There were a lot of questions in that one. Let's go piece by piece.
Mainly the second question.
So, what was the second question?
Do you think people, if they become more accepting of porn, would get too accepting of it?
Well, obviously in the United States, we have obviously the two-party system, conservatives and liberals, and there's a lot of beliefs about that. You know that conservatives actually are more Christian or more religious, and there's like liberals who are more laid back about things. And then, not also relating this to policies, but like where people live. Like if it's more like a more chill area, then you're gonna have more accepting people, and then if it's a more upside area, you're gonna have more people who aren't accepting of it, and then plus the religion and other things play a big factor into how like pornography is accepted. So, in what I believe is that it will never fully be accepted so like the entire human population will be into it, just because of things such as morals and religion. Right.
Did you do any research in comparison to the United States compared to like countries that are more accepting of porn, and if there's any difference between the two?
Well, the United States is actually the most accepting of pornography than any other country, mainly because of just how little regulation there is of it. But I do think, or I think in my research I've seen that New Zealand is the one that's the least restrictive out of all the countries, where any person can actually purchase pornography off the street, no matter what age.
Are there any places where porn is banned?
What do you mean?
Like, you can't watch it, you can't get it
In the United States?
all over the world.
There are places such as North Korea and places in the Middle East where if you have pornography, you can be put to death.
Was the research done to prove that there was no connection between pornography and criminal action?
I tried my best to research as much as I could, and then from what I've seen from authors that have put out, that there's some research that's not ethical to do, and such as viewing between that and teens, the use of pornography in teenagers. But criminality it's a really hard thing to actually look for, because if you're influenced by something, you can say you're influenced by it or not even know at all. Nobody would understand unless you let it out there. That's it.
Do you think porn is setting men up to unrealistic expectations of women?
That's a good question.
Good from there.
Same goes the other way.
Well, I do not dispute that there are a lot of unrealistic expectations within pornography, but really my focus wasn't on unrealistic expectations and things like that. It was more as why is porn good or bad, and should it be further regulated? But I do know that there are like unrealistic acts and things such as that within pornography.
Oh, right. Okay, wait. Okay, so you mentioned like, was it Ted Bundy?
Yeah.
And he was like influenced by pornography to kill people. So it's safe to say that it's not that porn caused him to kill people, that it's the combination of him and porn that made him kill people, right?
Pretty much.
Okay, but like, do you think any regulation could be made to keep porn out of the wrong hands? To keep people from Ted Bundy away from pornography?
I don't think that's possible without getting into the privacy of people, such as like medical records and things, which I don't think anybody wants pornographers to be inside of your own medical records, or like things like that. So I don't think that would be actually available for, yeah.
Oh yeah, so you said that like it's good for teens and adults to be exposed to porn. What if like children like are exposed?
Children.
Yeah. Since you said that there's no regulation.
Well, the thing about children is that it's more, I guess it would be bad for children, but that's why I say teens over children, because children accessing porn is completely different than teens accessing porn. Because as teenagers, we already have a sort of like map in our minds about what's right and wrong and things like that, whereas children are easily more impressionable. So when I think that for children it's more negative, but children shouldn't actually, children under a certain age should not be accessing pornography.
Just a reminder, there's still senior exhibitions on both sides and across. So we need to keep that noise level down.